Measuring education for sustainable development results for gender equality in teacher education. The content of this presentation includes a brief introduction to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the methodology used in the development of the ESD5 index, the preliminary results of this index, and conclusions and future directions. The SDG goals aim to tackle key global issues such as poverty, inequality, and environmental degradation. These goals provide a framework for countries to work towards a sustainable future by 2030 through targeted actions and initiatives. So, understanding the UN's SDGs is essential for aligning efforts and resources to create a more equitable and sustainable world. The Sustainable Development Goals report of 2023 showed that more than half of the world is falling behind in achieving the SDGs, that 50% of the SDGs progress has been weak, and in another 30% they are stagnant or have regressed. As a result, this report calls for ambitious national benchmarks to reduce inequality, focusing on key aspects such as improving the quality of education, which is ESD4, to address gender equality. Therefore, gender equality is a key priority within the 2030 agenda, aiming to eliminate disparities and ensure equal opportunities in education for all, while breaking stereotypes and discriminatory practices. Despite the fact that the Agenda 2030 clearly establishes through SDG 4 that by year 2030 we must ensure inclusive and equitable quality education, there are no precise indicators that measure the extent to which education for sustainable development is mainstream in national education policies, in curricula, in teacher education, or in student assessment. Limitations of the SDG indicators include a lack of comprehensive assessment specific to gender equality in educational policies. It also that existing measures may not capture the depth of gender integration in teacher training programs, and that assessment tools for student evaluation may not adequately address gender-sensitive pedagogy. This is important to target because limited indicators hinder the accurate monitoring of progress in ESD and gender equality initiatives. Due to these limitations, the purpose of our study was to develop a tool that measured the components of Global Indicator 4.7.1, specifically the ESD for gender equality, by providing specific quantifiable aspects. The ESD5 index was designed to measure education for sustainable development with a gender perspective in initial teacher training. Its development involved first conducting a comprehensive literature review to gather the existing knowledge and insights in the field of ESD for gender equality, and also looking into the equality plans of Spanish universities. Second, an expert assessment to provide input and feedback on the design and appropriate use of the ESD5 index. And lastly, a pilot study with pre-service elementary education teachers and social worker students to test the ESD5 index psychometric properties. The ESD5 index is a tool specifically created to assess education for gender equality within the context of sustainable development. This index consists of 106 items grouped into 4 subscales, and these subscales will be broken down in the next slide. The ESD5 index aims to enhance the effectiveness of initial training programs in addressing ESD for gender equality issues while integrating sustainable development. The key components of the ESD5 index are 4 subscales. The first subscale measures the level of integration of a gender perspective into teaching. The second subscale evaluates the contents and teaching strategies that educators use to teach on gender equality from a sustainable perspective. The third subscale assesses teachers' perceptions of their competency in developing a gender-sensitive practice. And lastly, the fourth subscale evaluates the level of training that is needed for teacher educators to develop the necessary knowledge and skills in the field of gender equality. Preliminary results of the ESD5 index show promising initial results for measuring target 4.7 and global indicator 4.7.1. It also shows that it has internal consistency as well as phase and content validity. And the item scales and indicators of the index could be considered for inclusion in current reports on ESD for gender equality. In conclusion, the ESD5 index has the potential of being a practical tool for assessing ESD for gender equality in educational settings. This would help with progress tracking, and it would help enhance accountability. Future research should consider that the data obtained from the ESD5 index may have some limitations, since they are limited to a specific population. We gathered all of the data from pre-service and or in-service teachers. And lastly, although there is a high level of coverage of what we understand to be the ESD indicators of equality with a gender perspective, the content and topics covered in the different subscales may not be complete. Thank you for your attention.